And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at a small game called Harbour. This is a game that I first heard about. Someone had mentioned to me that it was like a simplified version of Le Havre. Really? Well, I like Le Havre a lot, so I was very intrigued by that. And basically manipulating and selling goods to buy buildings. The concept of this, which comes from things like Agricola and Le Havre, was one I was really intrigued with. The fantasy theme, okay, I can take or leave that, but let's see what it's like. Okay, first of all, we're going to have in the middle of the table, you're going to have this little board here, and on this board are 4 different goods that are included in this game. We have cows and fish and wood and stone, and they're put here randomly, and this shows the initial values of each of them. You're also going to have your own player board. Now you can use either the generic player board, so you can, every player board comes with this side here, which has a couple of orcish looking people, and it's basically a generic building if you want everyone to have the same thing. Or you can use specialized buildings. Each of these also comes, and they have essentially a special ability, something that has to affect them. For example, this guy here starts with 2 anchors. He has a special building here, but no more anchors will affect him the rest of the game. And so each of these people has a special ability, and so you can pick those. Pick these for a more asymmetrical game. You start with 3 goods of your choice, so I could take a wood and that. You have these tokens here, and you're going to keep track of how much you have of each of the different types. You can only have 6 at the most of any type, and for your first game you can just start with 1 of every good if you like. Players also have some buildings here in the middle table. This is for a 3-player game. These will be drawn from a big deck, and players will have a worker of their color. And on your turn, most of the time, you're going to be putting a worker on a building that nobody else is in. It can't be the same building you're already in, and taking the action of that building. You can also do the one that's in your home area. So I might put my guy here, and this will give me 1 stone plus a resource of my type, or it lets me buy a building. So those are the 2 different actions I can take there. Up here at the quarry here, I can get 1 stone for every anchor symbol that I have. Over here, I lose 2 goods of 2 different types to get 5 of another type. Over here at the inn, I lose 3 different goods. Here, 1 fish, 1 stone, 1 wood, to get 4 of the livestock. Down here at the alchemist shop, I can lose 4 different goods to get 4 of the same type. Here, I get a stone and I can buy a building. Here, I get 1 of every type, but everyone else gets a good also. Now, you might want to buy a building, and when you do that, you're going to have to spend resources. So to do that, you're going to look at the main board here in the middle. Now, the way this board works here is, you'll notice there's a number above each one, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And there's also a number of goods under each one, which is the same number, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if I want to sell goods and buy a building, when I take the buying building action, I have to sell goods, take that amount of money, and buy a building. There's no change, there's no money. So if let's say I was able to sell these 3 things, I would have $12 that I could spend, that I could use that turn. Now to spend them, here I would need at least 5 fish. If I did so, I would spend all my fish. Even if I had 6, I'd spend them all. I would need at least 4 stone, at least 3 wood, and at least 2 animals. You may not be able to do one of them. Let's say I was just able to do these 3. I would then spend them, and I have $11 that I can now use to buy a building. When I'm done buying the building, this moves all the way over, and then these just move in like that, resetting the prices for each of them. And there's also buildings where you can reset the prices. When you buy a building, the cost is up here in the top right. So this one's 7, 9, 8, 6, 10, and 11. And when you buy buildings, you'll put them in front of you, which is good for a couple reasons. One, at the end of the game, they're going to be worth these points here. So this one costs $7 and is 8. This one costs 10 and is worth 10 points at the end of the game. But also, you can use those buildings, and if another player uses those buildings, they have to pay you a resource of any type for them to be able to use it. Players can also use your own building here that you start with, but they also have to pay you a resource for that. So this will continue until one player has built 4 more buildings for a total of 5 buildings. That will be the final round, and at the end of that round, the player that has the most points on the buildings that they have built is the winner of the game. Now, before we end up, there's 2 more things. One of these is kind of a little variant thing where at the beginning of the game, each player gets a bonus-style card secretly, which will tell them at the end of the game if they have, for example, 6 wood, they'll get 5 points. And so each person will get one of these that shows one of the resources. It's a way to get extra points at the end of the game. Also, I thought I'd quickly just show you some of the different cards that come with the game. The artwork here is really good. We have a fish market and a mason's hall and a ranch and a clock tower and golem crafters. And so there's a lot of different variety amongst these different buildings, and each time they'll be different as they come up and players buy them and utilize them. First of all, I have to say the artwork in this game is really well done. I'm a big fan of the artwork. I like it, and I think that the idea of the game is also well done. That being said, I didn't enjoy playing Harbour, but I think it's very easy for me to pinpoint the reasons why I didn't like it very much. And the biggest reason why I didn't enjoy it much is that the buildings themselves I found to be boring. When there's a game like this, and I'm going to compare it a little bit to Le Havre, and that's not always fair, but that's just how these work. In Le Havre, there'd be buildings where it would say, take 6 fish, whoa, 6 fish, go here and convert this to that, and oh yeah, look what I just did. Here, it was like, trade in 3 things and get 4. Ooh, I got basically a difference of 1. And honestly, most of the buildings, the net sum of what you would get would be 1 thing. So because of that, you're sitting there going, I'll take 1 thing. Next, come back, I'll take 1 thing more. And you're slowly building up to get to the amount that you can then trade in and get the goods that you need. And some of the buildings are more exciting. If in the demo that I showed you there was one building that gave you 1 of each type and gave everybody else 1. Well, who cares? I got 4. That's a better net sum, but most of them are a net sum of you're just manipulating. I'll move this one down a little bit to move this one up a little bit. And the excitement is not there at all. It's just kind of like this slow slog in an economic, I'll sell a little bit and get a little bit. And I felt that really affected my enjoyment of the game. The other thing was the market itself is very volatile, and that's problematic sometimes because you're saving up, and then someone will do something and all the prices change. Okay, so I needed 5 fish, now I only need 2 fish, but I have 6 of them. Well, I don't want to sell those fish, so what do I do in that regard? And so I wish that there had been more manipulating. There are some cards that let you manipulate it. Well, that's great, but they're not always out there, and usually you can't manipulate it and buy a building on the same turn. So sometimes you'd work really hard, and then your only option would be either to sit there and wait till the prices realign themselves or work hard to bring things up. Now, there are some symbols on the cards, which I didn't show you. I showed you the anchor one. There are some symbols on the card. There's a storehouse. Whenever you build a building of that type, when you sell goods, you can keep 1 of that type. There's a top hat. When you use someone else's building, you don't have to pay them. And there's a coin. For each coin you have, each other building costs 1 less. And then there's the anchors. And I love the concept of the anchors. The more you have, the more some buildings work. The problem is, you only need to build 4 buildings before the game ends. So these benefits that these buildings gave you were like so minor. The top hat's a good one, but the rest were so minor that by the time you're like, I got an engine going, game's over. And I think this game is about building an engine. Look what I can do. But it never really comes to fruition. You say, Vasel, this is a small game. This is a game in which, it takes these bigger engine games and condenses it into a small one. And it does do that. And I think there's going to be people who enjoy that, moving around the different pieces. But I'm not always a fan of the smallness because I think that what it did is it made the game smaller and more streamlined, but they also streamlined out some of the fun and excitement for me. Having all those cards, I was like, I can do this and that and that. No, they're just minor differences. This one I can trade in 3 fish to get 4 of this. This one I can trade in 2 things to get 3 of another. I just felt like I was manipulating the resources. So, not one I was very fond of. I think the production value is great. I think there are some people out there who would like it. I'm just not one of them. Dice Tower Judgment, not for me.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool Stuff in stock. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.
Shut the door.
There.